And welcome back. Come back here to me. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rusty. If you're not, then welcome back. And if you're new here, just welcome. Okay. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we are on day 2 of Wolf Week. And tonight we are going to be discussing, as you saw in the description or title, we are going to be discussing Wolfen. This is a very nice little 4-movie collection. Decent transfers, good transfers. There's not on a single disc or anything. But this is a very nice little 4-movie film collection. This is a side note. Wolfen and Bad Moon, which is another really good werewolf movie that I love, but it's not in this week. It'll be in the next one. But they're both very, very hard to find at a reasonable price, is Wolfen and Bad Moon. Body Snatcher with Meg Tilly is also kind of difficult. Coma is not as difficult to find, but I've got it in my collection already. I think I've got the Blu-ray. I love Coma. But to get Wolfen and Bad Moon when they are so hard to find, if you run across this 4-film collection, the rarity alone, good transfers, widescreen, all the goodies, you know. So this is a pretty good collection. I think I paid like $12 or $13 for it brand new, and that's like half the price of getting Wolfen or Bad Moon alone. That's how expensive and rare Wolfen and Bad Moon are. So yes, we're going to be discussing Wolfen. I've always absolutely adored Wolfen. Wolfen was released in 1981, directed by Michael Wadleigh. It was written by the book, Whitley Strieber. Wrote the book. David Ear and Michael Wadleigh both then helped adapt it for the screen. It stars the wonderful Albert Finney, whom these are the 2 movies that I know Albert Finney from are this, and add Ed Maserly and Aaron Brockovich. I love him and Aaron Brockovich. But these are the 2 movies that I remember him most from. You got Diane Venora playing Rebecca, and Edward James Olmos, Captain Adama himself from Battlestar Galactica, who obviously has understand me? Zero problem with nudity, which you will see in this movie, because Captain Adama just doesn't give a shit. And of course the phenomenal Gregory Hines, whom he's dead. It was horrible. Gregory Hines was hilarious. I remember him from Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. Gregory Hines was so hilarious in that movie, and he is so phenomenal in this movie, a serious movie. He's got some quips, but he's very serious in this movie. It's not a comedic role. No, there's nothing comedic in Wolfen, really, other than Gregory Hines throwing in a little comic relief every once in a while. Now, this movie opens with a very unique, what I call wolf vision, and that is the movie opens with, the skyline of New York, and then it changes into this not pixelated and not night vision and not anything like that. It's something completely unique. I've never seen it in anything else, and it's just it's a weird vision that's kind of off color. It's like off color a little bit, and then you have heat vision. It's like a bunch of different visions mixed together. Night vision, thermal heat vision, and that happens a lot. You know that you're looking through the eyes of the Wolfen when you see things being shown from that perspective. So we get to see that, and we're introduced to Chris Vanderveer, who is a like a Rockefeller, very, very rich, owns houses all over the world and all of that kind of stuff. And you see him at a groundbreaking ceremony. And you see it through the eyes of Wolfen. And then it switches to normal view. And you see he's in a limo with his voodoo Haitian driver, and him and his wife are coming back from an anniversary party. They are doing a little coke in the back, and they're obviously excruciatingly wealthy. He's giving her a big strand of pearls, and wants to go to Battery Park. Wants to stop by Battery Park, where they get out and they look around at 5 o'clock in the morning. Which I don't know if you could do that. Might could have done that in 1981. I don't know if you could do that these days. Be out in Battery Park at 5 o'clock in the morning and consider yourself either alone or safe. But that's what they did in this movie. It's a really beautiful scene. Everything about this movie probably has one of the most unique cinematography that I've ever seen in a movie is Wolfen. Just the shots, the edits, the way everything was filmed, the cutaways. It's just one of the most beautiful and spooky cinematography-wise movies that I think I've ever seen. But the driver and Chris and his wife, Deborah, they are brutally killed, and Chris's brain is taken. And, the next morning you're introduced to Dewey, who is Albert Finney. He is a police detective who is put on the case. He goes down there, meets up with the police coroner, which is Gregory Hines. They look around, and at first, Dewey is kind of like, because of the driver, he's suspecting maybe voodoo or something. Because of the state of the bodies, maybe Santeria or something like that is going on because of the driver. Wearing voodoo rings and things like that. So there's no real clues there, but Dewey is like instantly feeling weird about this case. The police, though, they're expecting some kind of terrorism, right? Because it's this really rich guy and his wife and, driver are murdered. So they're thinking some kind of corporate terrorism, something like that's going on. So that's kind of what they focus on through the whole movie, is trying to pin it on some kind of terrorist activity, an assassination. Whereas Dewey and and Whitaker, Gregory Hines, they are both kind of like, I'm not making up my mind about this. This is just weird. It's all just very weird. So they had also already thrown in little shots of Eddie. That's Edward James Olmos. They had already thrown in little shots of him, such as he threw a beer bottle at the limousine as it came through the tunnel going to Battery Park. And he is a Native American activist. So they kind of threw him in as a red herring, maybe he did it. Then you've got the cops who are swearing it's got to be some kind of terrorist group, like Weather Underground or something like that, making some political statement. So Dewey continues to investigate. One of the first things that they notice is Whitaker is like saying, well, this is a really weird thing. No matter how fine the blade on whatever kind of instrument it is, it's going to leave residue. And there was no residue on these bodies, no residue of any kind. There was not a metal weapon used to create the wounds. Deborah was almost decapitated. His brain was ripped out. The driver's arm had been ripped off with the gun still in it. And yet there was no metallic residue of any kind found on the bodies. So this was not a metallic weapon. Of course, we know, right? No, it probably wasn't. It was teeth, right? But so with them doing the terrorism expert, they bring in his niece who confesses to it, but they can tell she's lying because they got her on this sophisticated voice analysis machine. They can tell she was shocked. She didn't even know about it. So they keep getting thrown all these red herrings, mainly because the cops keep concentrating on a terrorist angle. So, in the meantime, you get to see back at that place where he had broken ground. It's like a very, very large slum area, ghetto area. And this is obviously where these creatures are home based. So you kind of can like think at the beginning, well, this is seen to have started when he was breaking ground at this large, what, I guess it looked about like 20 or 30 city blocks. It was huge, this area that they were going to develop into rich people penthouse condominiums, and just screw all of the homeless and the poor people that lived in that area. So, Dewey has now been partnered with Rebecca, who is a corporate terrorism expert. So she's still handling that angle while her and Dewey go down and look at this ghetto because Whitaker had called them and told them, and we got to see some kills of homeless people, bums. And one of the interesting thing about the bum getting killed was that you see his brain thrown over there to the side. So it didn't, whatever was killed him didn't take the brain. But then again, if you were a cannibal, would you want to eat someone that was so full of drugs, you see? See what I'm saying? So they're there, and there's this really good church scene. This old dilapidated church with him and Rebecca. Dewey really knows something's up after that scene. He grabs her, they run, they take off, and then you get wolf vision, where you get to see whatever this thing is, it has noticed Dewey. And it's tracking his car and goes into town tracking his car. So, we get to see that. Dewey now really suspects Eddie because of the things that are going on. Dewey now suspects Eddie of being it. And the next day he goes to see Eddie. Now this is a scene that I cannot watch. Probably not for what you expect. I have extreme vertigo. Okay? To say that I have a fear of heights would be probably, there's no way for me to describe how understating that you would be if you just said I had a fear of heights. I don't have a fear of heights. I have some kind of catastrophic faint, turn blue and faint with heights. I can't go above I might get above like a second floor of a building, but I'm going to be so dizzy and get vertigo. It's like Alfred Hitchcock, that spinning spiral. I cannot do heights in any way. But he goes like to the top of the Golden Gate Bridge, not the Golden Gate Bridge, but like the Brooklyn Bridge, and they're like way up there at the top. I have to watch that. The TV's over here. My monitor is right there. But that entire scene I can only listen to. I have to like look out the window while I'm listening to what they're saying, because from the top of the Brooklyn, I know I can't do that. So it's like Tom Cruise outside the window on that giant skyscraper in one of the Mission Impossible movies. My son would be laughing at me like going, "Look, Dad, that was so cool." And I'm like, I'm not looking towards the screen with him up there in the middle of the atmosphere. Are you crazy? Because even though I'm sitting in a chair, I would actually feel like I'm falling. I can't stand it anyway. So that's pretty cool. that scares me for an entirely different reason than you would think. So they have that little discussion up there where Eddie talks about shapeshifting, and that makes Dewey even more suspicious of him. He's like, oh yeah, you're doing some kind of psycho shapeshifting into a wolf, and you're killing these people. So he ends up following Eddie, coming out of a bar and stuff, and they know that he's following him. And I guess he's sort of like, full moon, okay, I'm gonna show you. So he puts some kind of like thing in his lip and goes to the beach, and Dewey follows him, and he just then walks right up to Dewey and just stands there and is like, I know you're here. Okay, you want me to show you shape shifting? I'll show you shape shifting. So he just stands and looks him straight in the eye and strips completely naked. You see front, back, everything. You see everything, and nothing is, Captain Adama. Very, very young Captain Adama. But, so he goes through this metamorphosis where he's like acting like a wolf, and is very believable. He's even able to make wolf prints in the sand as he's running and stuff. And so he basically fakes him out, because Dewey gets really scared, right? And he basically fakes him out, and then at the end, he like stands in front of him, naked as the day I was born, like stands in front of him and looks at him and like spits that stuff out, and says, Dewey, man, I told you, it's all in your head. It's all in your head, So I guess he kind of faked him out, so that was a funny scene, because I guess Dewey actually thought that he was going to literally turn into a werewolf in front of him. And he was like, no, man, it's all in the head. So, he fakes him out. Now, they end up, him and Whittaker end up like going to the zoo to see the professor at the zoo. Wanting to identify these hairs. They have found hairs on these bodies in the ghetto and on the Vanderveers in Battery Park. So they have found that these hairs are the same. They are identical. Whatever killed these bums killed one of the richest men in the world. So they end up going to a zookeeper, or a zoo professor, a professor of zoology. His name is Ferguson, so his name is Fergie. And he identifies it as Canis lupus, wolf. These are wolf hairs, and there is no wolves here. But maybe somebody's wearing a wolf coat with real wolf. I don't know. But these are wolf hairs. I'm just telling you. And, he kind of gets mad at them. He's like, you're trying to blame this shit on wolves in the middle of New York. I'm not going to accept that. You're crazy. So they're like, well, it is what it is. There's wolf hairs on all these body parts. And they also bring up, why are some body parts left? Because another thing Whittaker had noticed was that a lot of these strewn around body parts in these different locations, each and every body part that was found was diseased or drugged in some way. It's like liver, well, this liver is full of cancer, and this, this pancreas, and this bladder, so all the body parts that were left from victims were, to whatever was doing it, was unedible, and this starts making them think of cannibalism or something. So, but how would they know that the body parts were diseased? More to the story. So, after they leave, the zookeeper comes up with this idea. Because, of course, the Wolfen are outside his window looking at him, because they're following Dewey around. And he hears something that makes him suspect So Fergie like calls in a fake fire report in the vicinity, because he knows what that means, right? He knows that if he calls in a fake fire report, the building's on fire on this address, you need to come now. That they will come with what? Sirens blaring. And so he does that. Then he jumps on his bike, his little scooter, and he goes to this tunnel, and he sits there and he waits. And sure enough, he hears the fire department. And soon after that, he hears wolves howling. And he's like, oh my God, you're really here. And then I'm like, yeah, you're going to fucking wish they didn't in a minute. And he's so excited and everything. He's like, I can't believe you're here. And then he hears them growling. And I'm like, not so happy now, Professor. And he tries to get away, but they knock his ass right off the scooter as he's like trying to get right there. Bam. So he's killed, disappears. And that was obviously the end of Fergie. Although the movie ends without ever mentioning him again. But, we know that they got him. So Dewey, once he goes missing, Dewey has really come up with the idea that the home base for whatever the hell's going on is this ghetto. So him and Whitaker decide to stake out this area, especially around that church. So he's like, I'm going to get in this building, you're going to get in that building. We got our night vision and our radios and stay in contact. And we're just going to see, what we see out here in the ghetto like that. So they do that, and Whitaker's like, it's getting boring. I'm not seeing nothing. But Dewey knows they're around, and he's like, no, they're here. And then we get to see poor Whitaker get killed. And this is the first time in the movie that you get to see the wolves. And they are big and scary, And they kill poor Whitaker, which was terrible. And that freaks Dewey out even more. Dewey's like all bloody and scratched and all from running from them and stuff. And he goes back to that bar where Eddie hangs out. And he goes in there and he asks him, he doesn't ask him anything. He just sits down. And that's when Eddie and his little, it's like a Native American bar, or at least that's most of the clientele. And he sits down, and I guess in the shape that he's in, and plus kind of knowing what's been going on, because he's told Eddie in previous interviews, Eddie's just like, okay, man, I'm going to tell you. And he starts telling him, and through him, us, what the Wolfen are. And that is that, he explains that the Wolfen are wolf spirits, are the great hunters connected to Native American mythology, that they lived for tens of thousands of years, and that as man encroached, they went underground. They, they're not in the open anymore, that they went into where humans don't like to go, underground, the ghettos, the bad parts of town, where they pick off the unwanted and the hurt and the sick and the poor. It's kind of rude of them, actually, but that they don't want to get caught, of course, so they kind of stay to the dark side of humanity, where they, you killed all of their prey, the buffalo and the bison, that you killed their prey, you drove them underground, and so they started eating you instead. So once you kind of figure that out, and Dew figures it out, and he's like, hunting ground, the poor parts of town. So this all started because Vanderveer and his rich-ass company are going to tear down that entire bad part of town and redevelop it. You disturbed their hunting ground because this is where they lived, or this tribe of them, of the Wolfen. And they're only protecting their hunting ground and protecting themselves, you know. So now that once he understands that, he doesn't really know what to do about it. But he tries to tell the police sergeant, but, you know, the sergeant still says it's terrorists. And they end up going back to Vanderveer's apartment, where you can see this big, huge layout of the redevelopment project. And that's when the sergeant and Rebecca came in, and they're like, hey, we found the culprits. It's this terrorist group called so-and-so, and look what we found. And he holds up like a wolf pelt. And it's like, we found this at their apartment, or at their gang base, whatever you call terrorists. But, you know, we found it in their place, and so we've kind of solved it. And Dew is like, no, you really haven't, but okay, whatever. And they start to leave, only to find themselves in the street, surrounded by the Wolfen. And you get to see the entire pack, you know, including the white alpha male, beautiful wolf, solid white, not albino, but just white. And Dew is like, don't move. But you know, the sergeant, he's a cop. And the Dibble's got to play. So he pulls and runs, tries to get to the car. They rip his hand off, and then get in the car with him. He gets out, where they very expertly behead him in front of Rebecca and Dew. Dewey and her end up running back upstairs, because they don't know what to do, right? And when they get back up there, the wolves come in and surround them. And Dewey has his gun drawn. She's got her gun drawn. And then I guess it finally comes across to him that maybe this isn't what we should be doing. We should show reverence. So, knowing what's going on, he puts his gun down. And he doesn't really say it, but like telepathy in his eyes, you know, his eyes and the alpha is like locked, and it's almost like he's telling him, I understand, and I'm sorry, I ain't got nothing to do with this, you know, what can I do? So he ends up smashing the redevelopment project. He smashes it all to pieces, and like I said, put their weapons down. And I think this showed this pack, this one, that this is one that understands. He may not can stop it. I mean, what's a cop going to do about it? But he may not can stop it. But one, he understands. Two, he's not trying to hurt us. Three, he's showing reverence to our existence. And so they let him go. They let them go. They leave. They like poof. They go back to their little spirit wanderings. And then the cops break in, come in, what's going on? And he's like, nothing. And they're like, so we caught the terrorists. Case closed. And all him and her can do is walk out on the balcony, and it's like, yeah, okay, all right, sure, all right. And it's over for them. And the movie ends with the wolves running free in their little ghetto, and him doing this monologue about the things that man doesn't know exists on this world because we're blind to it. And the movie ends. And like I said, Wolfen is a very unique werewolf movie. Different take. I like my different takes on, doesn't have to be the same traditional storyline. I like the take that Wolfen has on the werewolf legend, myth, and how they incorporated it into a story. I have read the book by Whitley Strieber. I love the book. So yeah, you could read the book if you wanted to. And that is Wolfen from 1981. I probably will eventually keep looking until I find it for a reasonable price to get it on its own. But yeah, Wolfen from 1982. Some of the most magical cinematography. I could actually... The cinematography in this movie caused me anxiety. The way it was filmed made me nervous. I love the gritty cinematography in this. Everything in this movie felt dirty. Not dirty sexually. Dirty, grimy, gritty. You know, I think the only scene that even appeared to be clean was the Battery Park scene with the three, with the rich couple. But everything was just kept reminding me of like Bad Lieutenant, the 72 movie. Everything is very 70-ish looking, even though this was an 80s movie. It was a very dirty, gritty 70s look, Streets of San Francisco type look. So I really love this movie. If you don't have it in your werewolf collection, you really should, and you know it. So if you've never heard of it, check it out, get it, love it, own it. It is fantastic. Albert Finney, Gregory Hines, Edward James Olmos, and Wolfen. And I will see you in the next one, which will be Dog Soldiers. Dog Soldiers. One of the best werewolf movies ever made. Dog Soldiers. Well, especially if you're from Europe or if you have a life partially in Europe, because the accents and all of that. I love Dog Soldiers. And that's the next one, and I will see you in it when we discuss Dog Soldiers. This has been Wolfen on day 2 of Wolf Week, and I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for stopping by and checking it out. Let me know what you think about Wolfen in the comments. If you have it, love it, like it, seen it, hate it, whatever. And always remember, never forget, I think, and so does, well, I don't even have to think it. You are a very special person. Special and unique, and never forget that. Don't follow the crowd. Don't be one of the many. Be the only one of you. That was so cheesy, but nevertheless true. So, thank you for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one. You are a very special person, even if you are not a spirit wolf known as a Wolfen. The Wolfen. Bye-bye.